My wife filmed me, having a PTSD flashback, then sent it to CPS and told them I was too violent to take care of our kids. When I begged her mother for help, she laughed and said, "We've got all the proof we need now." I knew then I was alone. I knew what I had to do, and I knew it wasn't going to be pretty. When I returned home from my 18-month deployment in Afghanistan, I thought my kids would still love me. Watching those soldiers coming home videos was the only thing that got me through seeing all of my friends getting shot dead. So when I walked in the door and my children didn't even hug me, my heart completely broke. They didn't even look up from their iPads when they said hello. Like Temple Run was more important than their dad coming home. That's when I heard a crouching down the stairs. It was my in-laws. They hugged me tightly. We've been waiting for this moment for so long. This warmed my heart, and I hugged them back. Then my wife popped out of nowhere and lightly hugged me too. That's when I tensed up, because as I glanced around the room, I noticed it had been filled with empty moving boxes and suitcases. And I guess they noticed me staring, because that's when they broke the news. Maria, my wife, was struggling to take care of everything while you abandoned your family. So we moved in to help. My mother-in-law said the word abandoned like it was a joke, but it felt real. I froze in my tracks. Because Maria and I had countless conversations before I left for the war. She was the one who convinced me that it was a good idea to go. Well, other ex-soldiers had already warned me that things would seem off in the first week of returning. So I shoved my pain away and told myself it was only a matter of time before things went back to normal. That night for dinner, I cooked my famous roast chicken, the one with homemade rosemary garlic butter and creamy mashed potatoes. Before I left, my kids would practically beg for me to cook this every day. But now, nothing. Not even a thanks, Dad. We were eating in silence when my youngest son, 5, Lucas, dropped his plate on the floor. Suddenly my system raced into action. I quickly stood up and ducked under the table, whispering a countdown from 5 like I had done in the war. But when I got to 1, nothing happened. That's when I realized I was back home. I took a deep breath and sat back down, and instead of my wife comforting me, she stared at me with horror. Her mother was typing something furiously on her phone. I had no idea they had been filming me the whole time. Emma, my daughter, and Lucas were whisked away before I could even apologize to them. The next few months were brutal. My wife was as distant as ever, and my kids refused to do anything with me. The only thing there for me was my PTSD symptoms. And one day, I woke up to a knock at the door. It was a caseworker. "Mr. Hanley, I'm from Child Protective Services. We've received concerning reports about erratic behavior around your children." She then showed me something that still makes my skin crawl. Right there on her phone was a video compilation of my PTSD flashbacks, completely taken out of context. I had been framed to look unpredictable and show evidence of violence. I gripped onto the door frame to stop myself from collapsing. That's when my wife appeared behind me. I thought she was going to defend me, but no. "I think it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while, for the children's safety." Her parents flanked her like bodyguards, my MIL still filming on her phone. I knew if I didn't leave right then and there, it would provide more evidence of being a bad father. So I left my own home with nothing but a trash bag of my dirty clothes and a phone charger. I had only kept 20% of what I earned from being a soldier, with the rest going to my family. But there were only $3.05 sitting in my bank account. I texted Maria, and she responded instantly. "Investment opportunities? Your parents needed it more than we did." I stared at my phone, tears blurring my vision. My days became filled with depression naps in my truck, showering at the gym, and eating free food from the local church. I was sitting in a Taco Bell when I saw Jake. We'd served together, survived an ambush together. Now he's a lawyer. "Brother, what the hell happened to you?" When I told him everything, his jaw clenched. "Those videos, were they recording you without consent?" When I nodded, he smirked. "You know that's illegal in this state." And for the first time since I was deployed, I smiled back. Jake worked for free, fueled by pure rage. And after just a day, he found something that changed everything. I deleted a folder on my iPad, one that was still connected to Maria's iCloud account. What I saw made my stomach churn. Video after video of Maria coaching the kids, training them to ignore me when I was around. "Remember, if anyone asks, you don't feel safe with Daddy," she said casually, as if she was talking about the weather. And in the background of all of the videos was a man I recognized instantly, her CrossFit gym friend, the one I had always seen checking her out, now rubbing her shoulders while she taught our children to lie about me. That's when I knew I needed full custody. I scrolled through the folder with shaking hands. There were over 200 videos, each one dated and organized by month. The earliest one started 6 months ago, right around when Maria had started acting strange. I clicked on one from 3 months back. Emma sat on Maria's lap while Brad leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "What do you say when the judge asks about Daddy?" Maria asked sweetly. "That he scares me," Emma recited, her voice flat and rehearsed. "Good girl. And what else?" "That he yells really loud and throws things." Brad stepped forward, ruffling Emma's hair. "Maybe add that you cry when you see him. Judges eat that stuff up." My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the iPad. Jake grabbed it from me, his face darkening as he watched. We sat in that Taco Bell booth for 3 hours, going through video after video. Each one showed Maria drilling the kids on what to say, how to act, what lies to tell. Brad appeared in most of them, always offering suggestions, always touching Maria's shoulder or playing with her hair. "We need to file for emergency custody immediately," Jake said, already pulling out his laptop. "This is textbook parental alienation. No judge will ignore this." But when we filed the motion the next morning, things didn't go as planned. Maria's parents had hired Robbie Patterson, one of the most expensive family lawyers in the state. He showed up to the courthouse in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. "Your Honor," Patterson said smoothly, "given Mr. Hanley's documented PTSD and the concerning videos my client has provided, we request a full psychological evaluation before any custody modifications are considered." The judge nodded. "That seems reasonable. We'll schedule the hearing for 8 weeks from now, pending Dr. Leo's evaluation." 8 weeks. My kids would spend another 2 months being poisoned against me. Jake objected, arguing the coaching videos showed immediate harm, but Patterson dismissed them as taken out of context, without even viewing them. Dr. Leo's office smelled like expensive leather and old books. He had certificates covering every wall and a golf trophy on his desk. As he asked me questions about my deployment, my childhood, my marriage, I tried to stay calm and measured. Then I noticed a photo on his bookshelf. Dr. Leo in tennis whites, standing next to Carol at what looked like a country club event. "You know my mother-in-law?" I asked carefully. He glanced at the photo and smiled. "Oh yes, Carol and I play doubles every Sunday. Wonderful woman." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. Any complaint would make me look paranoid, so I answered his questions, knowing this evaluation was probably already decided. The supervised visit started 2 weeks later. I was allowed to see Emma and Lucas for 2 hours every Saturday at a sterile visitation center. Maria would drop them off, always making a show of hugging them extra tight. "Remember," she'd whisper loud enough for me to hear, "if Daddy tries to take you away forever, just scream for help." Lucas would start crying before she even left. "I don't want Daddy to take me away. I want to stay with Mommy." The supervisor would write notes while I tried to calm my sobbing 5-year-old, tried to explain I wasn't taking anyone anywhere, but the damage was done. Every visit started with tears and ended with the kids asking when they could go home. I noticed changes in Emma. Designer clothes I'd never seen before, a gold bracelet that looked real, new iPhone when she'd had a basic phone before. When I asked where they came from, she just shrugged. "Brad buys me stuff." "That's nice of him," I said through gritted teeth. "Does Brad live with you now?" "Sometimes. He and Mommy share a room." Jake tried to get the kids' school records, medical files, anything that might show the impact of what was happening. But every request hit a wall. The school needed both parents' consent. The doctor's office had misplaced the files. Even their teacher, Mrs. Bell, who'd always been friendly, now avoided eye contact when I waited outside school. Then Jake's investigator found something. Brad Morrison had a record. 2 restraining orders from previous girlfriends, both with kids, a fraud conviction from 5 years ago, identity theft, credit card scams. We prepared a motion to submit this information to show the court who is really living with my children. Patterson shot it down immediately. Your Honor, this is irrelevant character assassination. Mr. Morrison is not a party to this custody matter. Sustained, the judge said. Let's focus on the parents, counselor. Meanwhile, Maria started posting on social media photos of her looking exhausted, captions about being a struggling single mom and doing it all alone. Friends commented with hearts and support, not knowing I was sending 60% of my security job wages and child support. The garnishment left me with barely enough for gas and food. Richard showed up at my workplace the following week. I was checking badges at the front desk when he walked in, designer suit and all. Is your supervisor available? He asked the receptionist, loud enough for everyone to hear. I have concerns about one of your security guards, a potentially dangerous veteran situation. My supervisor called me in an hour later. Marcus, I'm moving you to night shift. Less interaction with the public. Sir, he's lying. I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but we can't have complaints. Night shift starts Monday. The night shift meant I couldn't even watch the kids at school anymore. Couldn't wave at them from across the street. My world shrank to darkness and empty buildings. During one Saturday visit, Lucas climbed onto my lap while Emma colored at the table. He was playing with toy cars when he suddenly whispered, Daddy, Brad hits mommy when he's angry. My whole body went rigid. The supervisor looked up from her clipboard. What did you say, buddy? Lucas's eyes went wide. Nothing. I'm not supposed to tell. Mommy said never tell anyone. It's okay, I said softly. Even his rage boiled in my chest. You can tell Daddy anything. But he shook his head frantically and went back to his cars. The supervisor made another note. Jake discovered more financial bombs. Credit cards in my name I'd never applied for. $30,000 in debt racked up while I was overseas. Purchases at stores I'd never been to. Restaurants I'd never eaten at. The credit card companies said I'd have to file police reports. Prove it was fraud. But that would mean accusing Maria, and Patterson would spin it as more erratic behavior. My security job wages were garnished at 60%, leaving me with barely enough to survive. When I tried to access our joint savings to pay Jake's investigator, I found the account frozen. Maria claimed I was hiding assets, moving money to avoid support. The irony was brutal. I was living in my truck while she claimed I was hiding wealth. Jake's investigator had been watching Maria's gym. One morning, he hit gold. Security footage from 3 months ago. 2 months before I'd even come home. Maria, Brad, Carol, and Richard sitting in the gym's juice bar, papers spread on the table. The investigator couldn't get audio, but the body language was clear. Carol pointing at documents, Brad nodding, Maria looking uncertain until Richard put his hand on her shoulder. They planned this whole thing, Jake said, studying the footage. Before you even got back, the pretrial hearing was a disaster. Carol produced photos of me at the shooting range, claiming it proved violent tendencies. It's required training for my job, I protested. Nevertheless, Patterson said, it shows a comfort with weapons that concerns my client. The judge ordered anger management classes before any custody considerations. Another 16 weeks of delay. Another 4 months of my kids being poisoned against me. Emma's teacher finally reached out, but not officially. She called Jake's office from her personal phone. I can't testify without a court order, she said. But Emma's failing 3 classes. She was a straight A student before. And the things she writes in her journal. She draws pictures of her family, but her dad is always scribbled out in black. Dr. Patterson, the children's therapist, took an even bigger risk. She called Jake privately, voice shaking. I could lose my license for this, but those kids are being severely damaged. The coaching is obvious. Lucas has started wetting the bed. Emma shows signs of severe anxiety, but my reports keep getting edited before they reach the court. We tried to get her testimony admitted, but needed a court order. Another motion, another delay. The deposition was our first real break. Maria sat across from Jake, Patterson beside her, court reporter typing every word. Jake walked her through the timeline, careful and methodical. Then he asked about the CPS visit. You said you were shocked by the videos they showed you? Yes, completely shocked. But you knew about them before CPS arrived? No, she stopped, realizing her mistake. I mean, I knew Richard was concerned, but objection, Patterson said quickly. Mischaracterizes the testimony, but the damage was done. The court reporter had typed every word. Brad started picking up the kids from school. The restraining order kept me 500 feet away, but I could see him from across the street. He'd ruffle Lucas's hair, carry Emma's backpack, play the perfect father figure. Other parents smiled and waved, not knowing this man had 2 restraining orders for domestic violence. My bank accounts were frozen next. Maria claimed I was hiding deployment money, moving assets offshore. Jake proved every cent went to Richard's failed restaurant venture, but the freeze stayed while the court investigated. How much more can they take? I asked Jake one night, sitting in his office surrounded by papers. We're close, he said. The emergency hearing is next week. The judge has to watch the coaching videos, all of them, unedited. The emergency hearing was supposed to be routine, just another delay tactic, but Jake had prepared something special. He'd synced the coaching videos with the timeline, showing how they escalated, how Brad's involvement grew, how the children's behavior changed. Your Honor, Jake said, I'd like to play Exhibit 47. The video filled the courtroom screen. Carol sat with Maria at the kitchen table, Brad in the background. Carol slid an envelope across the table. This will guarantee you get full custody, Carol said clearly. Your father and I will handle the legal fees. Once you have sole custody, you and Brad can sell the house. Start fresh. Maria took the envelope, pecked inside. Mom, this is exactly what you need to secure your future, and the children's future. Without him, the judge leaned forward. Patterson objected, claiming the video was edited, possibly deep-faked. Jake's expert witness, a digital forensic specialist, testified for an hour about authentication methods, metadata, impossibility of fabrication. Then came the breaking point. Video after video played. Emma crying as Maria told her daddy was dangerous. Lucas being coached to say he was scared. Brad suggesting specific phrases, specific accusations. 200 videos, 6 months of systematic alienation. Maria started crying halfway through. Real tears, not the practiced ones from her social media posts. I want to address the court, she suddenly said. Patterson grabbed her arm. Maria, I strongly advise. No, she shook him off. I can't do this anymore. The courtroom went silent. They made me do it, she said, voice breaking. My parents, they said if I didn't go along with it, they'd ruin me. They'd take everything. Make sure I never saw my kids again. They had Brad ready, had the whole plan. I just wanted Marcus to come home. I never wanted any of this. Richard stood up. She's lying. She's unstable. Sit down, Mr. Thompson, the judge said sharply. Maria continued, words pouring out. The threats, the manipulation, the money, how her parents had controlled her whole life, how they saw Marcus as beneath them, how they'd waited for the deployment to strike. Brad was their idea, someone they could control, someone who'd do what they wanted. But he's violent. He's hurt me, hurt the kids, and I let it happen because I was more scared of my parents than anything else. The judge had heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting immediate temporary custody to Mr. Hanley. Mrs. Hanley will have supervised visits only, pending further evaluation. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are barred from any contact with the minor children pending investigation. Carol screamed. Richard threatened to sue everyone. Patterson tried to maintain order as security moved in. Brad was already gone. He'd slipped out during Maria's testimony, probably heading for state lines. Jake's investigator later confirmed he'd fled to avoid the fraud warrant that was issued within hours. I picked up my kids that afternoon. Really picked them up. No supervisor, no time limit. Lucas hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Emma cried, but they were different tears. Relief, maybe. Or just exhaustion from carrying lies for so long. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered. I didn't mean those things I said. I know, baby, I know. Maria entered intensive therapy the next week. Real therapy, not the court-ordered kind. She had to unlearn a lifetime of her parents' control. control. The kids started therapy too, with Dr. Patterson now free to actually help them. Carol and Richard hired new lawyers, expensive ones, but their country club friends distanced themselves quickly. Fraud, conspiracy, witness tampering, child endangerment. The charges piled up. Their perfect reputation crumbled. They mortgaged their house to pay legal fees, sold their vacation home, liquidated their retirement accounts. 6 months later, I sat in a different courtroom. Final custody hearing. Maria sat across from me, but the hostility was gone. She looked healthier, clearer, like a weight had lifted. Your Honor, she said, I support Marcus having primary custody. I'm not ready. I need to work on myself, be the mother my children deserve. I know Marcus will take care of them while I do that. The judge granted it. Primary custody to me, supervised visits for Maria with a path to unsupervised as therapy progressed. Carol and Richard's trial was set for next month. They'd already lost everything that mattered to them. Their money, their reputation, their control. I drove home with my kids that day. Really home. Our home. Lucas chattered about school from the back seat. Emma showed me her improved report card, grades climbing back up. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful, boring, normal kid stuff. That night, I cooked my famous roast chicken, the one with rosemary garlic butter. This time, Lucas helped mash the potatoes. Emma set the table without being asked. We ate together, talking and laughing. No iPads, no coaching, no lies between us. Dad? Emma asked as I tucked her in. Are you going to stay forever now? Forever and always, baby girl. Forever and always. And for the first time since I'd come home from Afghanistan, I actually believed it. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a minefield. Every morning brought new challenges, new attempts to undermine the custody arrangement. Carol and Richard weren't going down without a fight, and they had resources I couldn't match. The first sign of trouble came when I tried to enroll Emma in her school's aftercare program. The administrator looked at her computer screen, then back at me with confusion. I'm sorry, Mr. Hanley, but our records show you don't have educational rights. That's impossible. I have primary custody. She turned her monitor toward me. There it was, a document filed just days before the emergency hearing, signed by Maria, removing me from all educational decisions. Jake later discovered Carol had Maria sign dozens of forms during those final weeks, creating a paper trail of restrictions that would take months to untangle. Lucas started having nightmares. He'd wake up screaming for his mother, then immediately apologize, as if showing any attachment to Maria was betraying me. Dr. Patterson worked with him twice a week, slowly unpacking the psychological damage. She showed me drawings he'd made during sessions, stick figures with angry faces labeled daddy, standing over smaller figures. When asked about them, Lucas would shut down completely. The coaching runs deep, Dr. Patterson explained during a parent consultation. He's been programmed to see you as a threat. It'll take time to rebuild that trust. Meanwhile, Emma retreated into herself. She'd sit at the dinner table, picking at her food, barely speaking. When I asked about her day, she'd give one-word answers. The vibrant, chatty daughter I remembered from before deployment had been replaced by this hollow shell. 3 weeks into our new arrangement, I got a call from the school. Emma hadn't shown up for first period. Panic shot through me as I raced to the school, calling her phone repeatedly. No answer. I found her sitting alone at a bus stop 6 blocks away, still in her school uniform. I was going to find Mom, she said quietly when I sat beside her. Brad said if I ever needed to escape, I should call him. My blood ran cold. When did Brad tell you this? Before you came back. He gave me a phone, said it was our secret. She pulled out a cheap flip phone from her backpack. Jake's investigator later traced it to a batch purchased with stolen credit cards. Brad had been planning contingencies, grooming my daughter for months. The financial pressure intensified. Despite the custody change, the wage garnishment continued. Maria's lawyer filed motion after motion, claiming administrative delays. My take-home pay barely covered groceries and gas. When the truck's transmission started slipping, I couldn't afford repairs. I'd walk Emma to school, then catch 2 buses to get to work. Carol found new ways to insert herself. She'd show up at the kids' school during lunch, standing just outside the property line, waving at them through the fence. The school couldn't do anything since she wasn't technically trespassing. Emma would come home upset, confused about why Grandma couldn't visit anymore. She says you're keeping her away because you're mean, Emma told me one evening. She says she has presents for us, but you won't let her give them. I tried explaining the situation in age-appropriate terms, but how do you tell a child their grandparents are manipulative criminals? Every explanation sounded like I was the one poisoning them against family. Richard took a different approach. He started calling my employer daily, filing complaints about safety concerns. HR documented each call, but the damage accumulated. My supervisor pulled me aside after the 10th complaint. Marcus, I know this is personal stuff, but it's affecting the workplace. Other guards don't want to work shifts with you. They're worried about getting caught up in whatever this is. I found myself increasingly isolated. The few friends from before deployment had drifted away during my months living in the truck. Jake remained steadfast, but he had his own practice to run. The loneliness pressed in during quiet moments, when the kids were asleep and the house felt too empty. Maria's supervised visits were another source of tension. She'd arrive with Carol and Richard, who'd wait in the parking lot despite the no-contact order. The supervisor, a tired-looking woman named Denise, did her best to manage the situation, but Maria would spend the entire 2 hours crying, begging the children to forgive her. I'm so sorry, she'd sob, clutching at them. Mommy made mistakes. Mommy needs you to tell the judge you want to come home. Lucas would cry along with her, while Emma sat rigid, torn between programmed responses and genuine emotion. After each visit, it took days to restabilize their emotions. The breakthrough with Lucas came unexpectedly. We were at the grocery store, and he accidentally knocked over a display of soup cans. The crash sent him into immediate panic, diving behind my legs, whimpering about not telling Brad. Something about his terror flipped a switch in me. I knelt down, helped him pick up the cans, and told him about my own fears. You know what? Sometimes loud noises scare me too, from when I was in Afghanistan. But it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to make mistakes. He looked at me with wide eyes. Brad said soldiers don't get scared. Brad lied about a lot of things, buddy. That night, Lucas climbed into my bed for the first time since I'd gotten custody. He didn't say anything, just curled against my side and fell asleep. Progress came in small moments like these. Emma's walls took longer to break down. She'd test boundaries constantly, staying out past curfew, refusing to do homework, challenging every rule. Dr. Patterson explained it was her way of seeing if I'd abandon her like she'd been told I would. Each time I remained calm, consistent, present, I could see tiny cracks in her armor. The financial investigation revealed more damage. Brad had used my social security number to open 6 credit cards, maxing them out on electronics and jewelry. Some purchases matched items I'd seen Emma wearing. The sick realization that he'd used my stolen identity to buy gifts for my daughter while poisoning her against me made me physically ill. Jake pushed forward with fraud charges, but Brad had vanished completely. His last known address was empty. Neighbors said he'd packed up in the middle of the night. The investigator found similar patterns in other states. A trail of single mothers with children, financial ruin following in his wake. He's a predator, Jake said, reviewing the files. Carol and Richard brought a predator into your children's lives. The school situation deteriorated further. Emma's grades, which had started to improve, plummeted again. Her teacher called me in for a conference, showing me essays Emma had written. Dark themes, violent imagery, confusion about identity and belonging. The school counselor recommended intensive therapy, but my insurance through work wouldn't cover it. Another financial strain I couldn't manage. Then came the letter from Maria's new attorney, not Patterson, who'd withdrawn after the emergency hearing, but someone younger, hungrier. They were challenging the custody order, claiming Maria had been coerced during her courtroom confession. Attached were affidavits from Carol and Richard, painting me as a master manipulator who'd somehow orchestrated everything. This is insane, I told Jake, reading through the filing. They're saying I planted those videos? They're desperate, Jake replied. Their criminal trial is coming up. They need to discredit you as a witness. The stress began affecting affecting my work performance. Operating on minimal sleep, worried constantly about the kids, distracted by legal battles. I made mistakes. Small ones at first, forgetting to log visitor badges, missing scheduled patrols. But in security work, small mistakes could cascade into big problems. My supervisor called me in after I'd failed to properly secure a loading dock door. Marcus, I've been patient, but this isn't working. I'm putting you on administrative leave. Unpaid. Get your personal situation sorted out. Unpaid leave meant no income. The wage garnishment had already drained my savings. I had maybe 2 weeks of expenses covered, then nothing. Jake offered to loan me money, but I'd already taken too much from him. Pride was all I had left. I sold everything I could. My father's watch, the one he'd given me before deployment, some tools from the garage, anything to keep food on the table and gas in the truck. The kids didn't need to know how close we were to the edge. Emma noticed anyway. She found me one night at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, calculator in hand, trying to figure out which ones could wait. Are we poor now? She asked quietly. We're managing, I said, trying to sound confident. She disappeared into her room and came back with the gold bracelet Brad had bought her. You can sell this. The gesture broke something in me. This child who'd been turned against me, offering up her possessions to help. I pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in months, she hugged back. Really hugged back. Not the stiff, obligatory embraces she'd been giving. We don't need to sell your things, I told her. We're going to be okay. She pulled back, studying my face. You promise? You're not going to leave again? I promise. I'm never leaving you and Lucas again. Something shifted in her eyes. Trust, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. The next morning brought another crisis. Lucas's school called. He'd had an incident, the secretary said carefully. When I arrived, I found him in the principal's office, shirt torn, face streaked with tears. He'd attacked another student who'd said something about his dad being a bad soldier. He said you cold people, Lucas sobbed. He said Brad told his mom you were dangerous. Brad's poison spreading even in his absence. I held Lucas while the principal explained the zero tolerance policy on violence. 3-day suspension. Another mark against us in the custody battle. Dr. Patterson called an emergency session. Lucas drew picture after picture of soldiers and families, trying to reconcile the father he was starting to trust with the monster he'd been taught to fear. Progress was painfully slow. Meanwhile, Carol and Richard's campaign continued. They couldn't contact the children directly, but they found ways around it. Presents delivered to the house with no return address. Cards slipped under the door. Always reminding the kids they were loved, they were missed, they were being kept away unfairly. I started finding Emma on the phone at odd hours. She'd hang up quickly when I entered the room. When I checked the call log, the numbers were always different. Untraceable burner phones. Carol had learned from Brad's playbook. Who were you talking to? I'd ask. Nobody, she'd say, not meeting my eyes. The supervised visits grew more chaotic. Maria showed increasing instability. 1 week catatonic with depression, the next manic with promises of Disney trips and new toys once she got them back. Denise documented everything, but Maria's new attorney spun it as a loving mother driven to desperation by unfair separation. Jake discovered Maria had stopped attending therapy after just 3 sessions. Her attorney claimed she couldn't afford it, despite Carol and Richard's deep pockets. Another manipulation, making her look like a struggling victim, rather than a willing participant in the conspiracy. The financial noose tightened further. The mortgage company called. Maria had apparently taken out a second mortgage months ago, forging my signature. The payments were past due. Foreclosure proceedings would begin if I couldn't catch up. Another impossible expense added to the pile. How is this legal? I asked Jake desperately. How can they keep doing this? It's not legal, he said grimly. But proving it, prosecuting it, getting restitution, that all takes time. Time they're counting on you not having. He was right. Every day felt like drowning in slow motion. Get the kids up, fed, to school. Bus to job interviews that went nowhere once they checked references and found the dangerous veteran complaints. Back home to help with homework, make dinner from whatever was on sale, pretend everything was normal. Then, after bedtime, back to the kitchen table, trying to make numbers work that simply didn't. Emma started taking on responsibilities she shouldn't have to. Packing Lucas's lunch, helping him with homework, trying to fill the gaps while I juggled everything else. 10 years old and already parentified by circumstances beyond her control. One evening, I found her teaching Lucas the same lies Maria had coached into them, but reversed. If anyone asks about Mom, you say she's sick, Emma instructed him. Don't talk about Brad. Don't talk about Grandma and Grandpa. Just say everything is fine. Emma, stop, I said gently. You don't need to coach him. He can tell the truth. She looked at me with eyes too old for her face. The truth doesn't help us, Dad. I learned that already. The weight of what these children had endured, what they were still enduring, crushed me. They'd been turned into weapons, then shields, now trying to be protectors. Their childhood sacrificed to adult manipulations. The next court date approached like a storm system. Maria's attorney had filed 17 different motions, each requiring responses, each costing time and money we didn't have. Jake worked 18-hour days preparing, but we both knew it was a war of attrition. They're trying to exhaust us, Jake explained. Make it so expensive and difficult that you'll accept a settlement. Shared custody, reduced support, anything to make this stop. But I couldn't. Not after everything. Not after seeing what that environment had done to my children. So we prepared for battle, knowing the odds were stacked against us. The week before court, everything accelerated. Richard was spotted talking to my former supervisor, no doubt planting more seeds of doubt. Carol hired a private investigator to follow me, documenting every moment, looking for any mistake to exploit. The pressure was suffocating. Then Lucas said something that changed everything. We were having breakfast, and he suddenly looked up from his cereal. Dad, I remembered something about the videos Mom made. I kept my voice carefully neutral. What did you remember, buddy? Grandma had a camera too, a different one. She said it was for insurance. Insurance. Another set of videos. Jake's investigator went to work immediately, but finding them would take time. Time we were running out of. The financial crisis reached critical mass when the power company sent a disconnection notice. 3 days to pay or lose electricity. I kept the kids in the dark about our money troubles, but this would be impossible to hide. That night, I sat them down for an honest conversation. Things are tight right now, I explained carefully. We might have to make some changes. Are we going to be homeless? Lucas asked, his voice small. No, buddy, I won't let that happen. Emma studied me. Is this because of Mom and Grandma and Grandpa? I chose my words carefully. Adults sometimes make choices that affect everyone, but we're going to get through this together. That night, after they were asleep, I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I called my brother in Oregon, the one I hadn't spoken to since before deployment. He listened to the whole story without interrupting, then simply asked for my bank account number. The power stayed on. Small victories mattered. Lucas started sleeping through the night without nightmares. Emma rejoined her school's art club, something she'd loved before everything fell apart. These normal moments felt like miracles after months of crisis. But the other side wasn't done. 3 days before the hearing, Jake got a call. Patterson, the expensive attorney, was back on the case. Carol and Richard had liquidated more assets, hired a team of lawyers, expert witnesses, even a jury consultant. They were treating this like a corporate takeover, not a custody dispute. They're scared, Jake said. The criminal trial is next month. If they lose custody definitively, it strengthens the prosecution's case. Fear made them more dangerous. The next day, Emma came home from school in tears. Someone had distributed flyers at pickup time. Her school photo next to the words, missing taken from loving family. Carol's work, no doubt. Skating just inside legal boundaries. Everyone was staring at me, Emma sobbed. They think you kidnapped us. I held her while she cried, feeling rage build in my chest. Using my children as weapons was one thing. Publicly humiliating them was another. Jake filed for an emergency restraining order, but the damage was done. Lucas withdrew again, afraid to go to school, afraid of what people would say. The progress we'd made evaporated overnight. Dr. Patterson called it re-traumatization, warned it could set back months of therapy. 2 days before court, Maria requested an emergency visit outside the normal schedule. Against Jake's advice, advice, I agreed. She arrived alone, looking healthier than she had in months. The conversation that followed surprised everyone. I want to make a deal, she said quietly, Denise listening from the corner. I'll support your custody if you drop the criminal charges against my parents. I can't drop charges I didn't file, I reminded her. The state is prosecuting them, but your testimony is key. Without it, they might get probation. I studied my wife, trying to find the woman I'd married beneath the layers of manipulation and damage. They hurt our children, Maria. They brought Brad into their lives. They destroyed us financially. They need to face consequences. They're my parents, she whispered. They're all I have left. You have Emma and Lucas. Focus on being the mother they need, not the daughter your parents want. She left without another word, but something in her expression gave me hope. Maybe, underneath it all, she was starting to see the truth. The night before court, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, reviewing everything Jake had prepared. Testimonies, evidence, financial records showing the systematic destruction of my life. It felt like preparing for combat all over again, except this enemy knew all my weaknesses. Emma found me there at dawn. She climbed into my lap, something she hadn't done in over a year. Are you scared? She asked. A little, I admitted. Me too. She paused, then added, but we're going to win, right? We're going to stay together? I held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing this moment of peace before the storm. We're going to fight for it, baby. That's all we can do. As the sun rose, casting long shadows through our kitchen window, I prepared for the battle that would determine our future. Win or lose, I'd given everything to protect my children. In the end, that's all any parent could do. The morning of court arrived with an unexpected development. Jake called at 5 a.m., his voice electric with urgency. He'd received an anonymous package containing a USB drive. The contents made my hands shake as I watched on his laptop. Carol had indeed kept her own recordings, not just backup videos, but footage of her coaching Maria on how to coach the children. Layer upon layer of manipulation, all documented by her own hand. In one video, she sat with Brad at her dining table, sliding cash across to him. 20,000 now, 40 when Marcus loses custody, she said clearly. Just keep playing the loving boyfriend role. Brad counted the bills, nodding. What about the kids? They're getting harder to control. Children are simple. Fear and rewards. Increase both. Jake immediately filed to submit the new evidence, but Patterson's team fought back hard. They demanded authentication, chain of custody verification, claiming the anonymous source made it inadmissible. The judge scheduled an emergency session for that afternoon to review. I dropped the kids at school, trying to keep my expression neutral. Emma sensed something anyway, grabbing my hand at the entrance. Today's the big day, isn't it? Just another hearing, sweetheart. She squeezed tighter. Lucas had another nightmare about Brad coming back. My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Brad's never coming back. The courthouse buzzed with activity when I arrived. Carol and Richard sat at their table, surrounded by their legal team. Maria was notably absent. Patterson approached Jake with a thick folder. Motion to dismiss the new evidence, he said smoothly. Anonymous sources have no credibility. But Jake had anticipated this. He'd spent the morning tracking the package. Security footage from the delivery service showed a woman matching Maria's description, dropping it off. When confronted with this during recess, Patterson's confidence visibly wavered. The judge returned, reviewed the authentication reports, and made her decision. The new videos would be admitted. Carol's face went pale as her own voice filled the courtroom, instructing Maria on psychological manipulation techniques. Remember, honey, Marcus is simple-minded. Military men always are. He'll believe whatever you tell him about needing space for the children's adjustment. Richard's voice joined in. The key is documentation. Every interaction, every word. We're building a case from day one. The timestamp showed this conversation happened 2 weeks before my deployment ended. Patterson tried damage control, arguing the videos were taken out of context, that Carol was simply a concerned grandmother. But then Jake played the Brad payment video. $20,000 in cash, clear as day. The judge's expression hardened. During the lunch break, I found Maria sitting alone in the hallway. She looked up as I approached, eyes red-rimmed. I dropped off the USB, she said quietly. I couldn't let them win, not after what they did to our babies. I sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. Why now? Dr. Patterson showed me Lucas's drawings, what I'd done to him, what they made me do. Her voice cracked. I found Mom's recordings when I was looking for Dad's will. She documented everything, like she was proud of it. Will you testify? She nodded slowly. My lawyer dropped me this morning when I told him, but I'm done being their puppet. The afternoon session exploded into chaos. Maria took the stand without an attorney, speaking directly to the judge. She detailed years of control, manipulation, threats, how her parents had isolated her from friends, made her financially dependent, used her children as leverage. When Marcus deployed, they said it was our chance to finally get rid of him. They had Brad ready, the whole plan mapped out. I was weak, I was scared, but I'm done being scared. Carol shot to her feet. You ungrateful little— Mrs. Thompson! The judge's gavel cracked. One more outburst and you'll be held in contempt, Maria continued, voice growing stronger. She revealed Brad's real role, the payments, the coaching sessions, how he'd started getting violent when the children resisted the programming, how she'd been too terrified of her parents to protect them. I failed as a mother, she said, looking directly at me, but I won't fail them anymore. Patterson tried to cross-examine, but without Carol and Richard's funding, his heart wasn't in it. The judge had heard enough. She called a recess to review all evidence before final ruling. Jake and I sat in a small conference room, surrounded by boxes of documentation. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school. She'd had a panic attack during PE, was in the nurse's office. I started to leave, but Jake grabbed my arm. This is it, Marcus. The ruling. You can't miss this. My daughter needs me, and she needs you to win this case. I'll send my assistant to the school. The longest hour of my life crawled by. Finally, the bailiff called us back. The judge looked exhausted, but determined. I've reviewed extensive evidence of systematic parental alienation, financial fraud, and conspiracy to manipulate the family court system, she began. The depth of this scheme is unlike anything I've encountered in 20 years on the bench. She detailed her findings, the coaching videos, the financial manipulation, Brad's involvement, Carol and Richard's orchestration, each point built toward an inevitable conclusion. Effective immediately, Mr. Hanley retains sole legal and physical custody of the minor children. Mrs. Hanley's supervised visits will continue pending completion of intensive therapy and parenting classes. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are permanently barred from any contact with the minor children. Carol's scream echoed through the courtroom. Richard lunged toward me, but bailiffs intercepted him. As they were escorted out, Carol's carefully constructed mask finally shattered completely. You destroyed our family, she shrieked at Maria. You're dead to us! Dead! Maria flinched but stood her ground. The judge continued, addressing the financial crimes, ordering full restitution, referring the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Brad Morrison had federal warrants issued for fraud and identity theft. Outside the courthouse, Maria approached hesitantly. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but maybe someday we can co-parent properly. For them, focus on getting healthy, I told her. That's what they need from you. She nodded, walking away alone. No parents to lean on, no Brad to manipulate her. For the first time in her life, truly on her own. I raced to Emma's school, finding her curled up in the nurse's office. She launched herself into my arms. I thought you weren't coming. I thought the judge would make us go back. Never, baby. It's over. We won. She pulled back, searching my face. Really over? No more court? Really over. That evening, I sat the kids down and explained the ruling in simple terms. They were staying with me. They'd see their mom sometimes when she was better. Their grandparents couldn't bother them anymore. Lucas climbed into my lap. What about Brad? Brad's in trouble with the police. He won't be coming back. Good, Emma said fiercely. I hope he goes to jail forever. The next weeks brought a parade of investigators. FBI for the identity theft, state prosecutors for the fraud, CPS for final evaluations. Each interview, each document built the cases against Carol, Richard, Richard and Brad. Jake's investigator finally tracked Brad to Nevada, where he was arrested trying to run the same scam on another single mother. Extradition brought him back to face charges. 37 counts of fraud, identity theft, and child endangerment. The financial untangling took months. Every credit card disputed, every fraudulent charge challenged. The second mortgage Maria had forged required extensive legal work to reverse. Slowly, painfully, we clawed back from the brink of bankruptcy. My job wouldn't take me back, tainted by Richard's poison. But a fellow veteran heard my story and offered me a position at his security firm. Better hours, better pay, understanding management. The kids could actually see me in daylight again. Dr. Patterson continued working with both children. Lucas's nightmares faded gradually. His drawings evolved from dark scribbles to normal kid art. Emma's grades recovered, her spark returning bit by bit. The healing wasn't linear, but it was real. Maria threw herself into therapy with desperate determination. Her supervised visits evolved from tearful apologies to actual interactions. She learned to be present without overwhelming them, to respect boundaries she'd never had herself. Carol and Richard's trial became a cautionary tale in family court circles. The evidence was overwhelming. Conspiracy, fraud, witness tampering, child endangerment. Their country club friends vanished like smoke. Their reputation, so carefully cultivated, destroyed completely. The verdict came down on a Tuesday. Guilty on all counts. Carol got 3 years, Richard 4. Their assets liquidated for restitution and legal fees. The empire they'd built on manipulation crumbled entirely. Brad took a plea deal. 18 months and full restitution in exchange for testimony about Carol and Richard's broader schemes. Turns out, my family wasn't their first target, just their most elaborate. 6 months after the custody ruling, I stood in my kitchen making dinner. Lucas helped set the table without being asked. Emma chatted about her art class, excited about an upcoming exhibition. Normal, peaceful, hours. Dad? Emma asked during dinner. Do you think Mom will ever be normal? I chose my words carefully. She's working hard to get better. That's all anyone can do. I'm glad she told the truth finally, Lucas added quietly, even if it was scary. Maria had sent them letters through Dr. Patterson. Not pushing, not manipulating, just acknowledging her failures and expressing hope for the future. The kids weren't ready to respond yet, but they'd kept the letters. Progress. That night, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet, peaceful. No more looking over my shoulder. No more documenting every interaction. No more fighting for my right to be their father. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Brad had been sentenced. 2 years federal prison, followed by probation and restitution. Another piece of justice served. I thought about responding, then set the phone aside. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The kids still had healing to do. I had my own PTSD to manage. Maria had her long journey ahead. But tonight, my children slept safely in their beds, dreaming normal dreams. The porch light attracted moths, dancing in circles around the bulb. I watched them for a while, thinking about patterns, cycles, the way people got trapped in their own destructive orbits. But cycles could be broken. My kids were proof of that. Inside, I checked on them one more time. Lucas sprawled across his bed, toy soldiers scattered on his nightstand. Emma curled up with the stuffed elephant I'd sent her from Afghanistan, the one she'd ignored when I first came home. Now it never left her bed. I'd lost 18 months to deployment, 6 months to hell, but we found our way back. Not to where we'd been before, but somewhere new, somewhere better maybe, because it was built on truth instead of lies. In the kitchen, I prepped tomorrow's lunches, signed permission slips, normal parent tasks that felt like privileges after everything we'd been through. The custody papers sat in my filing cabinet, official and final. But the real victory wasn't in legal documents. It was in Lucas asking me to coach his soccer team, in Emma showing me her drawings without fear, in family dinners where we actually talked, in bedtime stories and morning hugs and all the mundane moments that made up a life. The real victory was in being their dad, fully and completely, without anyone trying to take that away. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I paused at their doorway one more time. Safe, home, mine. And for the first time since coming home from Afghanistan, that was enough.